Which foods put American mobs in the streets? Three of them: beef, flour, and bread. On May 15, 1902, about 20,000 women on New York's Lower East Side smashed into butcher shops and set the meat on fire. This was not a war, and it was not an election. It was the grocery bill. Some of the loudest riots in American history started right at the dinner table. Here are three foods that turned quiet neighbors into a mob, and one that made a president pull out his pocket watch. Start with that beef. In the spring of 1902, the price of kosher meat shot up from 12 cents a pound, and some butchers were charging 18, all of it squeezed by a giant meatpacking ring people called the Beef Trust. Two women fought back. Fannie Levy, a cloakmaker's wife, and Sarah Edelson, who ran a small restaurant, walked door to door telling their neighbors to stop buying beef. On May 15th, the boycott turned physical. Women dragged meat out of the shops, soaked it in gasoline, and lit it in the street. Police made arrests, and it worked. The boycott held until June 5, 1902, and the price fell back to 14 cents a pound. Housewives had beaten the meat trust with an empty frying pan, now the flour. February 13, 1837. New York was sliding into a depression, and a barrel of flour that once cost about $7 now cost $12. Between 4,000 and 5,000 people packed City Hall Park in the cold to shout about the price of bread, rent, and fuel. Then a speaker pointed the crowd at Eli Hart and Company, a flour merchant sitting on 53,000 barrels. The mob poured down to Washington Street, broke through a door, and rolled the barrels out into the gutter. Wheat and flour ran white across the snow. Watchmen were beaten back before the city finally got control. Nobody walked home with cheaper bread that night. They just could not stand watching it pile up behind a locked door, and the bread. April 2, 1863. Richmond was the Confederate capital, and the Civil War had shoved food prices to about 10 times what they were before the fighting. A single barrel of flour could cost $28. That morning, a market vendor named Mary Jackson gathered a crowd of women, some carrying axes and knives, and marched on the governor. When they got no help, hundreds of them, maybe more, broke into the stores along Main and Carey Streets and grabbed flour, bacon, shoes, anything they could carry. Then, Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy, climbed onto a wagon. He emptied his pockets of money, pulled out his watch, and gave the crowd 5 minutes to go home before the soldiers opened fire. They scattered. More than 60 people were arrested, Mary Jackson among them. 3 cities, 3 foods, 1 trigger. A full store sitting behind glass while the pantry at home went empty. Beef in 1902. Flour in 1837. Bread in 1863. These riots reshaped city politics, and they almost never make it into the textbook. So the next time your grocery total makes you flinch, know that you are feeling something very